Okay, tell me who you are.
I'm for the defense, Mr. Morris, Morris.
I am the court. I am the witness.
I am plaintiff's attorney, Mr. Lukas, Lukus. Okay, and we are starting off in colloquy with the court. You guys see those names? Mr. Maylett, or Officer Maylett, Dennis Carpio. Okay. All right, starts with the court.
Who do you wish for your investigating officer?
I wish Investigator Nielsen remain to aid me in the presentation of the case. I'd like to have the following witnesses step outside. Dennis Carpio, Officer Maylett, and Investigator Bennett. And Mr. Edward Moore will be the first witness, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Moore, you can remain here and come forward if you would. All right, for the record, the motion was granted as to exclusion of witnesses and all witnesses who are to appear in the case. Does that apply to all witnesses on both sides, gentlemen?
Well, the motion should be to all witnesses, both sides.
Yes, Your Honor, I agree there are no prospective defense witnesses in the courtroom.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated. Would you state and spell your name, please?
Excuse me?
State and spell your name.
Edward Earl Moore Jr., the last name M-O-O-R-E.
Mr. Moore, what was your job on October the 6th, 1976?
Truck driver for Levitt's Furniture.
And on October the 6th, 1976, were you using the truck to make deliveries of furniture somewhere in the Compton area?
Yes, I was.
And were you with another person who was a fellow employee?
Yes, I was.
What was his name?
Denny Carpio.
Now, on October the 6th, 1976, were you the driver of the truck that was making deliveries in the Compton area?
Yes, I was.
And was Mr. Carpio the passenger?
Yes, he was.
Now, sometime during the afternoon of October the 6th, 1976, did you go over to make a delivery of furniture at 514 North Chester?
Yes, we did.
Did you actually unload the furniture and take it into a home in that area?
Yes, we did.
And do you remember the name of the lady who took delivery of the furniture?
I can't remember.
Was it Joyce Carr?
Could have been.
And after you delivered furniture, were you paid in cash?
Yes, we were.
And what type of delivery is that called when you go out and make a delivery and you are paid in cash on the spot?
COD delivery.
Now, about how much money did you get for that furniture you delivered over at 514 North Chester?
$400.
And when did you put that cash?
I put it on my top left-hand shirt pocket.
And did you issue a receipt for it?
The customer picks up the receipt at the store, and we just mark their copies paid when we take it out to the home.
Now, after you made this delivery of furniture and got some money for it, did you get back in the truck?
Yes, I did.
And were you driving the truck then?
Yes, I was.
Did you have any other money with you in terms of personal cash and any checks?
We had picked up a COD delivery earlier in the day of 2 government checks for about $300, and I had $1 on me.
Where were you carrying your dollar?
My dollar was in my wallet.
Was that in the back pocket?
Yes, it was.
Now, as you were driving along, did you get in the car, start to get in the truck, start it up and drive away from 514 North Chester?
No, I got into the truck and put the key in the ignition. We were parked on the wrong side of the street, so I checked the mirror on the right side of the truck to check traffic. So when the truck was started and was in gear, I could take off without running over somebody. And that's when Mr. Benton jumped through the window.
All right. Now, before you had seen Mr. Benton come up to the driver's window, had Mr. Carpio drawn anything to your attention earlier?
No, not really.
Now, while you were in the truck, were you parked in front of the house at 514 North Chester?
Yes, we were.
Now, did you see where that gentleman, Mr. Benton, came from?
No, I didn't.
Well, do you think you'd be able to identify Mr. Benton if you saw him again?
Yes, I would.
And also, did you identify him at a preliminary hearing?
Yes, I did.
May we have Mr. Lorenzo Benton brought in, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention to the gentleman who has been brought into the courtroom by the bailiff. Could you tell me if you recognize that man?
Yes, I do.
And who is he?
Lorenzo Benton.
And could you point to him, please? Could we have the gentleman that Mr. Moore pointed to identify himself for the record?
For the record, he pointed to the person in the white shirt here who's just been brought in by the bailiff, Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The court takes judicial notice that that is who he is.
Could Mr. Benton now be taken back? I wouldn't have any further use of him.
Mr. Bailiff, you may return Mr. Benton to custody.
I will need him for further witnesses.
I understand. We'll have him available whenever you need him.
Now, can you tell me what Lorenzo Benton did when he came to the side of the truck?
He came up to the side of the truck and stuck a pistol in my face and demanded that we give him all the money that we had. And at that time, I reached in my left-hand shirt pocket and gave him all the money that I had there. And then he says, "No, I want all your money." And so then I pulled out my wallet and gave him the dollar I had in my wallet. And then he pointed the pistol at my partner, Danny, and told him he wanted his money too. So my partner pulled out his wallet and handed him his only dollar. And then he says, "No, I want more." We says we didn't have no more. And at that time, he hit me on the side of the head and grabbed my keys and then took off.
Did he tell you anything at all concerning whether or not you should leave the scene where you were robbed?
He told us to stay there 4 or 5 minutes and not to follow him around the corner or wherever he was going.
Now, in addition to Mr. Benton robbing you, well, let me ask you this question. Did you turn over your money because you were afraid?
Yes.
And what were you afraid of?
I was afraid he might just shoot me.
Now, did you see the weapon that Mr. Benton had?
Yes.
And did it look like a pistol?
It was a pistol.
Did you see the silver part of the bullets in the cylinder?
I seen the cylinder part, the bullets in the cylinder.
Now, in addition to Mr. Benton coming up to your side of the car, did you see another person in this robbery?
I seen another person at the robbery standing on the left side of the truck back by the rear tire. He was just standing there.
And did you see him through a mirror? Did you see him by turning around and looking?
I seen him through the mirror.
Now I'd like you to take a look around the courtroom and see and tell me if you recognize someone that you think might be the other person.
I think it would be Mr. Dawson there.
Now, were you observing what Mr. Dawson was doing during this robbery?
Not that much. I was paying more attention to Mr. Benton.
What did Mr. Benton and Mr. Dawson do after your money was taken and you were struck?
Well, I seen them both. Well, Mr. Benton jumped off the step wheel of the truck and they took off. And last time I seen them, they were both running around the corner of the house and down the street.
Did you watch them both run away?
Yes.
Now, did you try to report this incident as soon as possible?
Yes.
And how did you go about doing that, Mr. Moore?
Well, first of all, we tried to find a telephone. You know, we figured that we'd call the police, you know, and we couldn't find a telephone. But we ran into a patrol car, so he was writing up a ticket, traffic ticket. I can't recall exactly, but he was sitting there, and we pulled in behind him and went up and told the officer what was going on. And then he called somebody else on the radio and told us just to sit tight until somebody else got there.
All right. Now, can you tell me on that day if it was a sunny day?
It was a sunny day.
And when Mr. Benton came up on the step of the truck, did Mr. Benton touch anything?
He touched the top part of the door of the truck.
Did you tell the police about that?
Yes, we did.
And did the police, while you were there, do anything to the truck to try to get fingerprints?
Yes, they lifted some fingerprints off the truck.
Now, when you saw Mr. Dawson, was he wearing something on his head?
He was wearing a bandana on the top of his head.
And when you saw him, did he look like he had a lot of hair on his head?
Yes, I guess.
And did you talk with the police department about this sometime in March of 1977?
Yes, we did.
And did you talk with the investigator, Investigator Nielsen, seated to my right?
Yes, we did.
Did he show you some pictures?
Yes, he did.
Now, did you go to a preliminary hearing in the Compton Municipal Court on April the 26th, 1977?
Yes, we did.
And at that preliminary hearing, were you able to identify Mr. Benton and Mr. Dawson as the persons who participated in the robbery?
Yes, we did.
Did you yourself?
I identified Mr. Benton. Mr. Dawson I wasn't too sure about.
Now, looking at Mr. Dawson right now, could you tell me if Mr. Dawson looks like the person who remained toward the rear tire of the truck?
Asked and answered, Your Honor. Objection.
Well, overruled. You may answer.
Repeat the question.
Taking a look at Mr. Dawson right now. Could we have Mr. Dawson stand, please, Your Honor?
All right, stand up, Mr. Dawson, please.
And could we have him make a turn completely around 360 degrees?
Very well. Let the record show that he has done so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dawson.
You may be seated.
Looking at Mr. Dawson now after he has risen and turned around, could you tell me if Mr. Dawson looks like the person who remained at the rear of the truck?
He appears to look like the person.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Surely.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I have no more questions.
Mr. Morris?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Moore, you've stated it appears to look like him. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
In fact, you can't be certain that it's him or not, can you?
No, not really.
And there's probably a lot, maybe hundreds of people you see every day in your deliveries in and around the Compton area that may look a lot like Mr. Dawson. Isn't that correct?
I would guess so. I don't really pay that close of attention, no.
In that preliminary hearing, you stated actually that, I think I recognize him, but I can't be sure. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Now, approximately how long would you say that Mr. Benton was up on the running board, or at least at the area of the window of your truck?
About 5 minutes, I would guess.
And how close did he have the gun to you while he was on the running board?
About 6 inches from my head.
So it was pointed right at your head?
Definitely.
Pretty frightening, wasn't it?
Yes.
And in fact, as that gun was pointed at your head, you had a good suspicion that you might not be living much longer, didn't you?
True.
Now, as you looked at the person who you say appears to be Mr. Dawson in this rear view mirror on your truck, was there anything between you and where the person that looked like or appears to be Mr. Dawson was standing at the rear of your truck?
No, there was nothing.
This is one of the large truck mirrors?
Yes.
Maybe 18 inches high and 6 inches wide?
Yes, sir.
Now, as Mr. Benton was standing at the window of the truck, he did not at all block your view towards the mirror and then walked back alongside the truck?
Sometimes he did, but he moved back and forth. When he came inside of the truck, I couldn't see, but when he stood back just a little bit with his arms protruding into the truck, then I could use the mirror to see to the back of the truck.
What you got was a glimpse on and off of Mr. Dawson?
That's right.
Or someone who looked like Mr. Dawson or appeared might be Mr. Dawson?
Right.
Throughout the period of this incident, this robbery you had with Mr. Benton and the gun, did this person that appeared to be Mr. Dawson do anything at all?
He did nothing at all.
Did he just stand there?
He just stood there.
Did he appear to be watching Mr. Benton?
He was looking up and down the street, but that was about it.
Did you hear him say anything?
Never said nothing.
Did you see him touch anything?
No, I never seen him touch anything.
Did you see anything in his hands?
Nothing in his hands.
What color was the bandana?
It was blue polka dotted.
And what color shirt was he wearing?
Yeah, so the final drum is. Okay, so tell me who you are.
I am for the defense, Mr. Kerry, Kerry.
I am the court.
I'm the witness.
I am plaintiff's attorney, Mr. Patterson, Patterson. Okay, ready? Starts with me. Question by Mr. Patterson. When did you first learn that Mr. Stevens had elected to leave the premises?
Right after the first of the year, the first week in January,
What was your reaction to that information?
I was very, very surprised.
Okay, did you ever receive any indication from him that he intended to leave or was going to leave?
No, none whatsoever.
Did you visit the premises on January 18, 1983?
Yes, I did.
All right. And what did you see, if anything, regarding the moisture problem, related problems?
I spoke with Mr. Stevens, who took me to his back storeroom where he has shelves against the wall. He pulled away a shoebox and asked me to feel the wall, which I did.
And what did you feel?
It was damp.
Was it raining at that time?
Yes, I think so.
And did you see any other problems in the store at that time?
No, I really didn't.
You've heard testimony about the condensation problem on Mr. Stevens' front window?
Yes.
As you're walking by on the sidewalk, have you actually seen that condensation problem?
Yes, I have.
As you're walking by on the sidewalk, can you see the products on display in his window?
Yes, I can.
Through the condensation?
Yes.
Are you aware of any other stores having that condensation problem?
No other stores have that condensation problem.
You are aware of any other stores that have insects on their premises?
Not that I'm aware of.
On the occasions that you have visited Stevens' premises, did you ever happen to see his back door left open for extensive periods of time?
Yes.
Did you say anything to him about that?
Yes.
What did you say?
I said I didn't think it was wise because it was very easy to reach inside and take something that he had stored against the back wall.
You testified earlier that Mr. Stevens requested that rent adjustments be made on his behalf.
Yes.
Were any adjustments made in any shape or form regarding rent?
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
It was asked on cross, Your Honor, not on direct.
Overruled.
Am I supposed to answer that?
Yes.
We credited them for over $800 for damaged merchandise to his account. We also allowed him to occupy a 1,600 square foot space without any kind of rent whatsoever except for CAM charges.
What are CAM charges?
CAM charges are the common area maintenance charges of his share of taking care of the parking lot and what have you, and his share of the taxes and insurance, and he paid those. Otherwise, he was allowed to stay in there for rent-free for 9 months, and we felt that that certainly was adequate rent adjustment.
All right, what efforts were made to help Stevens in the promotion of the store?
Well, as we said before, we helped him advertise his fund runs, which are specific to him. We have, again, promotions during the year.
Your Honor, excuse me, I'm sorry. Your Honor, I'd like to object. I don't understand what the relevance of this line of questioning is as to what they did to help Ken Stevens, what that has to do with him terminating the lease.
Your Honor, the point has been made or attempted to be made that he asked for rent assistance and that was not done. I think the efforts that were made to assist him in other ways, in other forms, is certainly relevant to whether he'd been treated fairly as a tenant.
All right, you may ask the question.
What else?
What else?
Other than fund run promotions to assist Mr. Stevens.
We sponsored a soccer team and the jerseys and everything came from his store. That came to about $300.
You paid or credited Mr. Stevens that amount for purposes of those jerseys?
I think we paid Mr. Stevens for the jerseys.
Was there anything else done regarding product lines for Mr. Stevens?
From the very beginning, when he moved into his store, he didn't have a good shoe line, athletic shoe line, and everybody in our office tried to work on helping him get a shoe line. I personally called the salesman, Mr. Cope, and asked him to come call Mr. Stevens and had a long discussion about why he should and how I thought his store was terrific. Mr. Cope felt that there were enough Nike store representatives in the area, but I told him that Mr. Stevens deserved at least a chance and that Mr. Cope ought to go and look at his store and see what he was doing, which I thought was very exciting. And I wrote a letter to Mr. Stevens and said so. And as a result, maybe not of that, but certainly that had to have something to do with it, Mr. Stevens now has the Nike line, which I think is a big percentage of his business.
When you say you did write a letter to Mr. Stevens.
Yes, I wrote a letter to him explaining what exactly had transpired in my conversation with Mr. Cope.
Your Honor, at this point I'm going to be asking a couple of questions about the gross sales of Mr. Stevens' store. We've requested that that type of information remain confidential, and I would certainly offer the same alternative to Mr. Stevens. If you'd like the courtroom cleared and like instructions as to confidentiality to be maintained by this information, I'd be happy to.
Are you going to ask Mr. Stevens about his gross sales?
Yes.
He doesn't care.
All right, Your Honor, it's also been pointed out to me that Plaintiff's 14, the exterminator bill, was not admitted into evidence. I would ask that that be admitted.
Any objection?
No objection.
That's in evidence.
Mrs. Shaw, you have received from Kenneth Stevens figures as to his gross sales for 1981 and calendar year 1982, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you heard Mr. Stevens testify in open court as to his total sales for 1982?
That's correct.
What, according to your calculations, were his total sales in 1981?
Approximately $216,000.
What were his gross sales in 1982?
306. How do you say, you know what I'm saying, 300 and,
100?
no,
No.
306,000.
306,000?
300.
306,000?
Thank you. $306,000.
All right. Okay, and have you computed the increase, percentage of increase from 1981 to 1982?
Yes, it's 42% increase.
Your Honor, that's it.
Increase is
42%.
of what figure?
1982 over 1981.
And the figures were $216,000?
216.
16?
1,000.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Mr. Carey,
Excuse me, I must have missed something. You're through?
Yes.
do you have anything further on redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Shaw, you testified that at the time Sally Cummings terminated her lease with you, she was behind in rent approximately $7,000?
I'm not 100% sure because I haven't seen her ledger for a long time.
Okay, well, that's all right. That's approximate.
I think so.
And some of that is late charges?
Yes.
If somebody's late with her rent, generally you charge them so much percent until it's paid. Is that correct?
No, it says in the lease if you're late in your rent is now due on the 1st, overdue on the 10th. As long as it's overdue, you're charged 10%.
Just 10%?
Yeah.
And she had some late rent in there?
Yes, she did.
Okay, you testified about helping Ken with the fund run and sponsoring a soccer team, helping him get Nike. Would you agree that you have an interest in helping your tenants engage in these promotions and get additional product lines because ultimately it will benefit yourself?
Well, in establishing a brand new shopping center, their success is our success.
Correct. And in addition, in this case, if Mr. Stevens reaches a certain percentage in his gross sales, you will get a percentage of that. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Now, you've mentioned that Mr. Stevens did not complain to you in October of 1982 about waterproofing?
Yes.
Okay, the first rain came in October, and in fact, Mr. Stevens himself testified it was no considerable problem at that point. The original problems came with the November rain, is that right?
That's correct.
And is it your testimony that Mr. Stevens did not complain to you in November about water problems?
Mr. Stevens did not complain to me in November.
He complained to Mr. Farron, who then told you about it?
Yes.
You've indicated that you have observed Ken's front windows in that when the condensation is there, that you can see products from the outside?
That's correct.
How often do you come up to the center and inspect the premises?
I come up to the center once a month, but I don't necessarily inspect the premises once a month. I try to go in and see everybody once a month. It just depends on what else is going on.
You're not there on a day-to-day basis?
No, I'm not.
Haven't you allowed other tenants to have adjacent space if that space has been vacant as sort of a trial run?
I don't think we have.
You haven't done that with any other tenants?
We have an empty space that we allow tenants to have meetings and things in, but to allow a tenant to move into a vacant space, as we did Ken, I don't believe we've done that. I don't remember right at this moment.
Okay, is it possible that you may have done that with one more tenant besides Ken?
Objection calls for speculation as to her recollection.
Sustained.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Patterson, any more questions?
One or two. Mr. Stevens ever been behind on his rent?
Yes, he has.
When did that occur?
He started paying rent for the second space.
And do you know the maximum amount that he was behind in his rent?
Approximately $14,000.
Were there late charges assessed against him for that amount?
Yes, there were.
And did he in fact pay those late charges?
No, he didn't.
Why not?
Because as he testified, he and I had a meeting about the amount that he owed us, and we agreed that we would make double payments throughout the summer to take care of his balance. And we agreed that if he, by the time he specified, had finished payments, I said that we would take away his late charges, in which in fact he did, and which in fact we did. $2,000 I think were the late charges.
Well, thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Carey?
No more questions.
Am I finished?
Nothing further. Thank you very much, Mrs. Shaw. Mr. Carey?
Call Dave Morris, Your Honor.
Can we get an estimate from counsel on the remaining testimony, Mr. Carey?
About an hour, 45 minutes.
I assume that you have rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor.
What's your suggestion then for the scheduling?
What's it look like Monday, Your Honor?
Trial starting at 9:30 Monday.
I have depositions on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for another attorney in my office who is going to trial, and I don't think those can be rescheduled. And I also have a deposition on Friday, and we've got people out of town this week.
This court has a conference this afternoon between 4:30 and 4:45. It's flexible. I would propose to hear Mr. Morris this afternoon. Do you have any other witnesses?
Mr. Morris and Miss Cummings, who would be very brief unless they're going to go well beyond the examination I make.
Those will be the only two. If we get to Miss Cummings this afternoon, those will be the only two we hear.
I would appreciate if we get Mrs. Cummings on. She has to go to Los Angeles.
Let's take Mr. Morris first. We should still have time for Miss Cummings.
Okay, Your Honor. State your name and your occupation, please.
David Morris, Vice President of Beacom Construction Company.
Okay, you've been listening to some of the testimony this afternoon, have you?
Yes.
Okay, and you're the general contractor for Red